بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب ولا الضالين صل على أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد صل على محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله وأعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أفرأيت من اتخذ إلهه هواه وأضله الله على علم وختم على سمعه وقلبه وجعل على بصيره غشاوة فمن يهديه من بعد الله أفلا تذكرون صدق الله العلي العظيم. The captivity of religion has been our topic, and tonight is lecture number 3. Our attempt now from the past 2 nights has been to trying to understand this istilah or this terminology that was used by Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. There's too many people in this hall for a weak salawat like that, guys. Let's go, come on. In letter number 53 of Nahj al-Balagha, he, in a very famous letter of Malik Yashtar, he has a very beautiful line where he says to Malik, Inna hadha al-deen qad kana asiran. That this deen was a deen that at one point was a captive in prison. And we use that along with the verse from Surah Jafiyah 45:23, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now describes to us those individuals who have removed the actual deen of Allah and taken their own khaishat, their own hawa as their ilah, their desires or what they believe is the deen to be their deen. And Allah says, because of that now I have made you, or I have caused you to deviate off the path ala ilmin, based on the very knowledge that you think you have. These are not jahil individuals. These are not people who have not read about the deen. These are people who might be considered to be the ulama, might be those who are scholars, academics, etc., etc. Allah says, if that knowledge does not translate into ubudiyah and subservience, it becomes ba'ise dhalalat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a reason for deviance. And once that happens, Allah says, look, I've sealed your ears, I've sealed your heart, I've sealed your eyes, I've covered your eyes up, I've covered your basirat up. And then, as I said yesterday, like a very strong God, فَمَنْ يَهْدِهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ اللَّهِ. After that, where are you going to go? Who will guide you after God? So these two combined with the qawl of the ma'soom and the wahi of Allah, we understand that the deen cannot be a deen that's a seed inside of us. where we place it in prison, and sometimes we open it, let it out, Shab Qadr, Shab Ashur, Eid Namaz, Day of Ashura, when it comes time for spouse selection and arranging our weddings and making big decisions about halal income and what to post on social media, that of course is inside the prison. I don't want this guy called the Deen to influence my decision on these things I just mentioned. That's a problem. So yesterday we talked about why. Why is it that some of us choose to subconsciously, consciously, unconsciously place this Deen in prison for us and selectively give that Deen some air, let it roam around for a little bit, then put it back in prison when it is convenient for us. When we are comfortable with following the Deen, or I'm comfortable with following the Deen, I release it from prison and I put it back in prison when it's uncomfortable for me to follow the Deen. We talked about the idea that there are a bazillion questions inside of us. There is a doubt that's inside of us, and that doubt has to be rectified. That was yesterday's conversation. Tonight, with the help of one term I want to use, and I will, of course, break down that term. It's a term that used by Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayh in his masterpiece of Adab al-Salat. He talks about something called mura'at. Okay. Let's talk about mura'at tonight. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, please. To understand this term, let's journey through the Quran like I have been asking you to come with me every single night. I really am trying to focus this year on the Quran. For myself, first of all, maybe for all of you. You already are the Ahl Quran, mashallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Ali Imran has a very interesting, very short verse. It's a simple verse, but yet it has a very deep meaning to it. One of the reasons why the Quran is a miracle is because it is baligh, it is fasih. Part of that is that a small amount of words, but very, very deep, life-changing words. My first usher was on one word, yesterday's talk was on one letter. That's how deep the Quran is. It invites us to go a little bit deep inside. And us being the followers of that family, of those imams, of those ma'asumin who have given us that depth, it's hayf, it's afsos, it's unfortunate that we haven't gone past the surface level of the Quran. Or at least I haven't. Because when I go a little bit deeper, the treasures at the bottom of this ocean are incredible. The verse says this, أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولُهُ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. Okay. Follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do ata'at of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Rasul, so you may be amongst those who are worthy of mercy. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. So you may be included amongst those who are, what? Who are forgiven, who have been showered mercy upon is a better translation. Now I understand the idea that, okay, follow Allah and you gain this, you gain that, you gain heaven, you gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But where is that link between the ata'at of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and mercy itself? So I'm going to park that verse up here somewhere. I'm going to return back to it at the end of my speech, hopefully full circle, so you understand exactly what mura'at is, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Oh. You know, I came to Houston with a very nice complexion. Fair and lovely and Aveeno, and my nighttime routine is excellent. I spent 2 days in this Houston sun. It's not anyone else's sun, it's a Houston sun. And I look like rotisserie gold up here right now. These lights don't help, mashallah. I'm like this gravy coming out of my skin right now. Jesus, this hot sun is like... Next time call me in January, please, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, please. Where was I? Yes, mura'at, inshallah. Inshallah. Stay with me. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very beautifully talks about the idea that following me and my Prophet will allow you now, thank you very much, will allow you now to be amongst those who are merciful. As I continue that, I'm going to be asked, I know in 5 minutes, there are people standing at the door. Let's make this one massive movement up, inshallah, if you don't mind, with one loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, please. Especially those in the middle, if you don't mind, please. In the middle and to my left here, please. Nice and tight, inshallah. Ya Ali. Beautiful. One more loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, please. See, part of the reason why I think, and I don't like to use that word, just based on sort of, the experience, talking to individuals, my own journey, my own struggles, maybe the struggles of a lot of you sometimes. The reason why sometimes the deen is not leading the charge inside of us are for several reasons I'll talk about on the weekend for sure. But one of them is simply because it wasn't presented to us properly. Let's be very honest. And spiritual trauma that we have is very real. It's very real. Our adults may not accept it. I may have a tough time accepting it. But the reality is that a 21-year-old, a 23-year-old who's struggling right now to make some connection with God and the deen, there's a reason behind that. Right? There's a reason behind that. It might be, a horrible Sunday school experience. It might be an alim that wasn't very kind to them. It might be the fact they were told, if you do these acts, God will what? Will burn you in the hereafter. It could be that there was judgment, let's say, from the elders in our community to the point where I didn't want to come to these four walls. There's a lot of trauma we're dealing with, right? And so what I want to do tonight is maybe for myself at least, start the process all over again to reintroduce a deen that really, really deserves to be reintroduced to us. Look, not my topic very quickly. We talk about the prophets of God. We talk about the fact that every prophet of God was the best individual of their era. That I think all of us understand. There's nobody better during Nabi Nuh's time than Nabi Nuh. There's nobody better than Nabi Ibrahim's time than Nabi Ibrahim. There's nobody better than our holy prophet during that time. There wasn't a better individual. We cannot say that during Nabi Yaqub's time or Nabi Yunus's time, so-and-so person was a better person altogether than this Nabi Yunus was, or Nabi Yusuf was, or so on and so forth. Every prophet was the best individual in all aspects of their nation, of their tribe, of their era. That I think is accepted. All of you may not accept it, but I think majority of you do. If that's the case, you look at their collective message, all of it was towards a deen, towards a religion. If you have multiple people that you respect, that are respected in the community, that you yourself now look up to, multiple, 5, 6, 7 of them, having one clear, united message, that message might be something that maybe we might consider. If the worst of the people are calling us towards A, we might be a little bit hesitant towards A. But the best of the best are calling us towards B, let's give B a chance. Let's hear B out. Which means that if you are somebody who is suffering with and dealing with spiritual trauma, you think about God and you just have this pit in your stomach, or you think about your journey up until now in your 20s and 30s, be it through hijab, or be it through salat, or be it through a wedding, or be it through a marriage, or be it through having kids, whatever the case may be, me and God aren't on the best terms, Syed Asad, then at that moment you have to address that. Because the deen requires us to revisit it constantly. I'll give you a very simple example I used before. I don't know the roads here in Houston. So when I leave my home, wherever I'm staying from, and I drive my car, I pop in my GPS. I have to get to Voss Road, right? So I go through Kirkwood and through Highway 6 and blah, 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 and this and that. And then she get to this, right? Make a left, make a right, blah, blah, blah. And my marja right now is that Google Maps. If I make a left turn instead of a right turn, it doesn't say, Are bewakoof? Why'd you do that? I'm telling you, go right, yar. No, it'll do what? Tell me. It'll reroute me. If I make 10 wrong turns, it'll reroute me 10 times. If I make 50 wrong turns, it'll reroute me 50 times. An annoying app we have such i'timad of, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't understand. If I've gone off the path a little bit, I made a little bit of a turn where I shouldn't have. Maybe I made the bad decision. Maybe now in my 30s, I should have. And hindsight. Well, guess what? God will reroute you 1,000 times. There's no retirement age in Islam. We have 90-year-olds coming to our imams looking to start fresh. So if you need to start over with God, then start over with God. And deal with the baggage and the trauma one by one. Don't bury it. Don't hide from it. Easier said than done. I get it. But it requires us at least to give it a chance. Let's hear the brother out. Let's not put him in prison. Let's release him and say, look, let me hear your presentation. You're selling a vacuum? Come on in. Go ahead. You're selling encyclopedias? Go ahead. Let me hear you. You're selling akhirat and jannah? Let me hear you. Let me hear you. And that's what I want to do tonight. Is I want to reintroduce things to a different lens for me. Maybe for all of you. At least for sure for me. Don't be afraid to reroute. So long as my destination is IEC Houston, that will reroute me 1,000 times. No problem. I don't change the destination, the rerouting won't change either. As long as I know I want to get to God, that's my destination in my GPS. G-O-D, 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 it will reroute you 1,000 times. And let it reroute you. Because Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam says, the reality of Iman is fluctuation. The reality is fluctuation. We want an incredible spiritual experience every single time I worship God. And because I don't have that spiritual, that spiritual experience after my salat, it must be something wrong I'm doing or God doing. That happens enough time. Like, yeah, maybe religion isn't for me. It's not for me, Sayyid. Might be for you, and I'm happy for you, but it's not for me. Our initial expectation was wrong, I'm sorry. I've been worshiping God for 30, 40 years. I still can't, walk through walls and see people's barzakh and read people's minds, and what's the point? Mind you, I'm not talking about the fact that we shouldn't be better. We should be better. But sometimes just praying salat because God says so is enough. Just coming and saying, look, I'm just checking in. You're the master, I'm the slave. Subhana Rabbil Azim wa bihamdih. Khulafis. That's it. If God now blesses us with a moment, an aha moment, an epiphany, then alhamdulillah. But let's not expect us to walk through walls after every Fajr Salat. Not going to happen. I want to capture that moment when I walked in Arba'in. Why can't I capture it? Because that's Karbala and this is Houston, Texas. You can't expect that. It doesn't mean that you don't keep going. So let's examine this a little bit. Let's first of all start off with a sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of you with me, inshallah? You're comfortable? Sisters, we are good? Excellent. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, please. Fantastic. Let's come to Surah Ali Imran. The Prophet has a sunnah, the Imams have a sunnah. Guess what? God has a sunnah. He has a way of doing things. And if there is an emphasis for us to follow the Prophet's sunnah, you better believe there's an emphasis to us to follow God's sunnah. Now God is telling the Prophet how to introduce the deen to his people. Let's start there. He says to the Prophet, very simple. لو كنت فظا غليظ القلب لانفضوا من حولك فاعف عنهم واستغفر لهم وشاورهم في الأمر. Be kind to them. Don't be hard-hearted with them. Don't be cruel with them. If you had been like that with them, they would have left you, deserted you. Instead, forgive them and seek forgiveness for them. And then in a brilliant way, he says, seek advice from them as well. The Prophet of God, the Habib of Allah, the best creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God himself is saying, these people that you're looking to guide, ask them for advice sometimes. Ask them, do mashfarat as you would say in Urdu and Farsi. But do this with kindness. Don't be rough with them. Be gentle with them. A verse you've heard 1,000 times. Now you might think that's the Prophet to others, the Prophet to his ashab, the Prophet to the Ahl Mecca. I'm saying it's you to yourself as well. Because I'm sorry, sometimes to follow the deen of Islam in this society, in this world, at this moment in time is not easy. It's not easy. Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma salli ala. He says sabr is of 3 types, right? Look at the reality and look at the realism of the Ahlul Bayt. The first moment of sabr is ala ma'asiyah, against hardships, that's obvious. The next one is, of course, against shaitan. And then very, very eye-opening wise, he says, it's also patient. It also requires patience for you to follow the sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In a world of fashion, in a world of glamorization, for our sisters to cover themselves up is very difficult. To leave your house to make sure that you have sleeves on and socks on and your entire face is covered is very difficult. Sorry, entire hair is covered is very difficult. For someone to make sure that they're praying salat 5 times a day. For someone to make sure their income is halal based. Right now, you can make millions through the haram way. To make sure our tongue is in check. To make sure we give our khums. To make sure we do all that is not easy. It's not easy. Let alone the idea of fighting our desires and choosing our friends properly and not going down this habit and that addiction. It's not easy. But no one ever said it was easy. That's why the reward is so high. Hum fiha khalidun, Allah says. I'm not giving you a moment of eternity. I'm giving you Jannat for hum fiha khalidun. But it requires a little bit of work. And the Prophet is being told these are people that need to be led towards the deen with a lot of love, a lot of kindness, some patience. Maybe 1 step back, 2 steps forward. Maybe that salat that you read wasn't, you weren't all into it. Your mind was somewhere else, right? But maybe the salat after will be a little bit better and a little bit better. Imam Jafri Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. He says sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes and accepts only 10% of our salat. Now I might think, great, I'm praying this and only 10% went towards Allah. Or you could go glass half full and think God will take anything that's remotely close to Him from us. Any drop. Now mind you, we shoot for 100%, but if 1 rakat or 1 alhamd, I was really into that alhamd, but afterwards I thought about my mortgage and my dinner party and my post and my reel and blah 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 and tonight's lecture, and my mind is gone, I'm going through muscle memory. God says, you know what, fine, but I'll take the alhamd for sure. And in a world where it's all or nothing, we have to break that idol inside of us. That's one of the biggest problems I see amongst our youth. Either it has to be perfect sayyid, or there's no point in doing it. Nah, Baba, it's not like that, man. Aslan injury nist. I was told to put some Farsi lines into my speeches. Not like that. We have to break this idol of go big or go. Yeah, that you complete. But hadiths and verses, yeah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So this idea that if I can't do it perfect, there's no point in doing it, is not the purpose at all. It's not the case at all. Keep that verse in mind. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. I'll go back to it. Keep mura'at in mind. Keep the idea that the first sunnah that Allah gives the Prophet of Allah is deal with these people kindly. Go slow with them. The gradual introduction of the Sharia into Mecca and Medina across 20 plus years. The gradual wahi of Allah's verses across 20 plus years. In fact, exactly 20 years are all sunnat ilahi. That He is not in a rush. He is not in a rush. It's not like on the very first day, haram wajib, haram wajib, haram wajib. No, wait a second, they're not ready yet. The last thing, the last verse about fiqh is riba and interest. Before that, alcohol. These things were rampant in that society. And God knows that if from day number one I said, turn it all off, they'll run from us. They'll rebel. You have to sometimes lead and massage your nafs into Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I remember that in my days in the house, in the beginning, when you arrive at the house, you think you're God, right? So no furniture, we're going to sleep on the ground, we're going to break our bread over our knee, we're going to dip our bread in salt water, blah, 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 this and that. We're in the house now, we're going to strip the dunya. In my first year in the house, my teacher taught me Farsi, and then he would ask me about, are you married? I'm married. You bring your wife? I brought my wife. You guys live off cap? Yeah, I live off cap. I live over here, for example. Okay. Tell me about your home. So I told him, he goes, tell me what furniture you have. I go, I don't have much. I have this, I have that. We like the cushions look, right? The open hall and the walls have cushions. He says, do you have a TV? I said, astaghfirullah, Ustad. Where am I right now? Ya Allah. I said, let's stick to Farsi. I said, no, I don't have a TV. He says, go buy a TV. Go buy a good, if you can afford it, go buy a TV. Because you've brought your wife and yourself from that part of the world, and now you're asking your nafs now to somehow turn that off. What ends up happening, if it's too much fishar and too much pressure on it, it's going to do what? It's going to rebel. It's like the sixth Imam talks about raising kids. You can either tighten their grip, right? Every movement out, where are you going, why are you going, where are you going? And then the sand, he says, like sand in the head, if it's too tight, it runs to the fingers, he says, and you lose the sand. If it's too open, it runs to the sides, you lose. That's a little bit of a balance. You have to now slowly introduce the idea that you are now in in the hawza, from the west now, by slowly doing those things. Those things that are not haram for you, don't make them haram for you. I know a lot of you have been struggling with the deen, and other people don't help. I know a lot of you have tried. I've tried, it's not for me, I'm going to move on. It's not that simple. Because when Imam Khomeini now talks about mura'at and his adab al-salat, he brings about a beautiful hadith from Imam Jafri as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. And in fact, he narrates a conversation between the Holy Prophet and Amir al-Mu'mineen. And I say this statement with a lot of responsibility, knowing full well that I know you won't take this the wrong way. He quotes the moment that the Prophet says to Imam Ali, Ya Ali, Inna hadha deen, this deen is a deen mateen. It's a vast deen. It's a strong deen. It's not going anywhere. Then he says, فَأُغْلِلْ بِهِ بِرِفْقٍ. Enter it very slowly. And do it with kindness, with compassion, to yourself. The deen is very strong, he says, so enter the deen slowly. In the same chapter in Adab al-Salat, the 11th Imam has a beautiful hadith. He says, when your hearts are ready, then confide in them. When the hearts are not ready, then leave them. Look, there are moments where the heart goes through iqbal and idbar. Iqbal, the hearts are running towards the musalla, running towards the mihrab. I can't wait for the month of Ramadan. I can't wait, let's say for example for Hajj. I can't wait, my heart is ready, give it to me. When the heart is open, you have those moments now, right? Where worship actually feels amazing. At that moment now, the 11th Imam says, feed that qalb, give that qalb. You prayed your salat, stay in the musalla, mustahab du'as, Quran, ziyarat, it's ready, it wants more. Then there are moments where that qalb closes up and goes to idbar. And all you can get through is that 4 rakat Zuhr salat. Is it over yet? At that moment now, what we do is we put more pressure on ourselves. I must read this, I must read that, I must read this. I understand the idea of pushing yourself. Push yourself. You have to know yourself to the point where now you are, God forbid, creating a distaste in your mouth for ibadah. That's the fear of the Prophet of Allah. When the hearts are open, confide in them. Meaning what? Give them. Hearts are closed, leave them. Leave them in their state. Same Nahj al-Balagha, Imam Ali says that do not let your mustahab actions come in and affect your wajib actions. Mullah, I recite Surah Mulk and Surah Rahman and Surah Yasin every single night before I go to bed. MashaAllah, great. Sometimes I get sleepy. Is it okay if I just read 2 instead of 3? Absolutely, sister. If you're reading the Quran and you're checking when the para is over, you're like, oh, there's still 5 pages left. Okay, I can do this, I can do it. Push yourself again. At that moment, Baba, close it. Khulafis, come back to it. The heart has closed. The heart will reopen. That's why it's called a qalb. A qalb means what? Fluctuation. Ya muqallibal. Thank you. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It's a dialogue up here. It's a dialogue up here. Talk to me. I want to hear from all of you. This is the reality of it. So he says this idea of us understanding how slow to enter and how easy to, not easy to take it, how much to enter and how I can reach certain levels, that's called mura'at. The idea of understanding and respecting one's capacity for the deen. And everyone has their own capacity. This deen is deen mateen. It's vast, it's big. If you are right now swimming in your corner of the ocean and you're perfecting that, that's great. That's your success. If you decide to venture out a little bit, right? First I'll dip my toe in the water, then my foot in the water, then my leg in the water, then I'll stand in the water. Now I'm swimming in the deepest portion of the water. Good. That's stage by stage by stage. If I feel like God is mad at me, if I feel like God is mad at me, if I feel like God doesn't hear me, I've been asking for this dua constantly, one by one, bit by bit, and I don't want to approach him, I don't want to feel disappointed, because one of the biggest knocks against organized religion is the capacity for disappointments. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know who of any viable source ever told any of us that God wants absolute perfection or he wants nothing from you. Who told you that? And if someone who told you that is not, like I said last night, muttasir bikur, is not attached to a large body of water, you have to think twice about the source of your knowledge. Because anybody who has access to an ocean of knowledge, meaning the Hawza Ilmiya or ulama, let's say for example, will all tell you that God is a process-driven God. God's a God of mura'at. God's a God of capacity. And we have to do things slowly. And then once we understand, you know what, I can do that, because the beauty of the capacity of Iman is it's not fixated on an 8-ounce glass or 2-liter jug. The more you show Allah, look, I can maximize my capacity, that's when your capacity begins to grow. It's like a glass, right? The more you pour in it, the bigger it gets. Never seen that before, right? But that's how our Iman is. Sometimes all you need to do is put this much orange juice in your glass and drink that. Then this much orange juice in your glass. You know, they say in the West, right? Don't sweat the small things. Don't sweat the small things. In Islam, they say what? Sweat the small things. Oh, every small thing leads to something bigger. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, please. Surah Al-Araf. My last verse, and then I close the circle. Surah Al-Araf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very clear why I'm sending these men of God towards you. Why am I sending these men of God towards you? He says very openly, يُحِلُّ لَحُمُ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَيُحَرِّمُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْخَبَائِثِ وَيَضَعُ عَنْهُمْ إِصْرَهُمْ وَأَغْلَالًا. Allahu Akbar. Beautiful. I ask you, come with me with all of your filters and all of your veils removed if possible. These are verses of the Quran that are speaking to your heart, not just mine. The first 3 or 4 years of my Hawza experience, my teacher spent time destructing and destroying what I thought I knew. I came in with my whatever knowledge I had, my preconceived notions, what I heard from the member, what I heard from all that. He goes, that's great, but if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and blow that building up. I want a khali zameen from you. I want an empty land from you. I want uncultivated land from you. Now, once you come, I begin to talk about kalam, Tariq, Quran, blah, blah, blah. That's what I need from all of you tonight. If there's trauma inside of you, veils inside of you, scars and hardships in front of you, you've been judged, you've been given unsolicited advice from some auntie or uncle. If you've gone through all that experience, and God knows you have to remove all that, because the deen deserves your chance. The verse says that the prophets have come down for what? For 4 things. Number 1, to make those things that are pure, beautiful in this world, halal for you. Number 1. Anything shaitan makes halal for you is not tayyib and pure. No matter how this brother packages that gift. The second one is that Allah has made the khaba'ith, those things that are khabith in nature, impure, disgusting, haram for you. And then he says, I sent down prophets for what? يَضَعُ عَنَهُمْ إِسْرَهُمْ وَأَغْلَالًا, to remove your chains and cut your shackles. Oh, what a verse. What a verse. And you stop and ask yourself, what chains and shackles right now am I tied? I'm free, Syed. I don't know what you're talking about. I have no shackles and no chains. Because in this world where people are having a tough time to identify who they are, or they wake up one day and now there's somebody different, and with pride they say, I identify as so-and-so, we end up asking ourselves, what's our identity? What should I identify with? Remember, my basic, level 1 identity is that we are all slaves of God. Let's get that first and foremost out of the way. Our identity is that we were created to be enslaved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why any instance of spirituality that is godly in nature is there to break the shackles of the ego, to break the chains of narcissism. You can't be an egomaniac and still say Allahu Akbar. God is great, that's fine, but because you have an ego, you've made yourself greater than God. As I mentioned last year, we end up using God as a what? As a divine butler, as a nokar. I'm sorry for that word. Aye, say, yahan pe saaf kariye. Can you clean here? Can you cook here? Can you iron my clothes? Can you bring my car? Can you drive me here? Perfect. Done. You can go back to your quarters now. When I need you, I'll call upon you. He becomes the slave, I become the master. That's a shackle. That's a chain. And the Prophet now, in a beautiful way, the Quran is saying, we sent down these men of God to break the shackles of the individual chains and to make you somebody who's a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when you sit there and you serve a master like God, the more you serve him, the higher you go as a slave. At that moment, you don't rely on somebody's approval or somebody's like or someone's comment on your reel or someone's emoji or someone telling you how beautiful you are, how faithful you are, how amazing you are, OMG this. No, you don't rely on that. Why? I got my validation from my Lord already. He's already sent down prophet after prophet, ma'asum after ma'asum to make sure I break those shackles inside of me. He says the more you serve me, the more your ego is destroyed. And you can say what you want to say, but a person who walks around with an ego is unliked by a lot of people. A person who's a narcissist is unliked by a lot of people. Is not somebody who has the respect of his family or his community or sometimes even himself. And that's why in the verse that I chose in the khutbah, وَمَنْ يَهْدِهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ اللَّهِ, who will guide you after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now when he says, Atiyullah wa Rasulul allakum turhamun, that look, if you follow me and you follow my prophet, then I will place you amongst those who will be showered with my mercy. What mercy is that? The mercy is, I'm going to make you into an incredible human being. I'm I'm going to remove the ego from you. I'm going to remove this reliance on people pleasing from you. I'm going to remove this idea that you become somebody just so the person in front of you might like you, to the point where I can't look myself in the mirror. Tell me that's not the case nowadays. Tell me that I am now trying to dress and trying to look and trying to speak and trying to become somebody so you can accept me. But in the heart of my hearts, I know this is not me. How exhausting it is to act like somebody that I think you want me to be. Meanwhile, I'm somebody else. God says, you come to my door, you follow my deen, you release that deen from prison, and you have my validation. After you're validated by God, think of people and this and that and individuals, it's not there anymore. And that's known as mura'at, Imam Khomeini. Go slowly, increase your capacity bit by bit, pour it in, taste it, pour some more, taste it. If you can't start with your salat. If you can't come to the Quran, read one verse with English translation. If you can't do anything, dhikr of Allah. La ilaha illallah. On the way to IC every night, one tasbih of salawat. Small things, takes 10 seconds. Then watch your capacity grow. وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Take the first step, Allah says, I'll open up outlets for you. I'll open up doors for you. وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. I'll give you sustenance from a source that you never even imagined was a source to begin with. It's a promise of God. And His qawl is not like my qawl. I'm bad qawli. I can say I'll do this, I won't do it. But God does it. It's hatmi, it's certain. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, please. So ask yourself on this night, on Friday, what shackles have I placed around my neck? What chains is the deen coming to break? Is it individualism? Is it instant gratification? Is it the need to be told I'm beautiful by those who don't have any beauty at all? Is it the fact that I need to be told I'm spiritual by the ones who are not spiritual at all? The faster we get to that identity, I identify as a slave of God. Everything I do is because my master says so, period. That's it. That's my answer. Then slowly but surely the chains of fadgira'i, of narcissism, of ujb, of takabbur, of pride, that has caused divorces in our communities, that has caused walls between our communities, that's caused our hearts to be blackened. All those things bit by bit now are removed. What's left is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No? لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. If you have a flourishing marriage, if you have a strong family where now you've worked very hard to maintain that family, that's the mercy of God. I'm not saying those who have marriages that are not going well, families not going well, that they've been denied the mercy of Allah. No, I'm not saying that. But there are some people that they know because of their egotistical behavior, they have ruined their marriages. Because of their desires, they've made their hawa, their ilah, their desires, their God, they've destroyed their families. And you really have to be heedless and ghafil to not understand what I'm doing. And that's why أَفَلَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. The verse I chose in Surah Jasiyah, at the end of all of that, Allah says, think, man, think, ponder, reflect, stop and think, remove the veils, remove all of these hujub that you have, and get to your asl, get to your actual alone existence. How do I get that? My last point. The Prophet of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says, if you want to measure your spirituality, who you actually are, am I a mu'min or a mu'minah, measure yourself when you're alone. You go on a business trip, you're gone for 3 days. John, I'm going for 3 days. I'll be back on Monday. I'm going to New York. They put you in a hotel room, perfect. You have a full weekend of events, conferences, and are you waking up for Fajr in that hotel room or not? Are you be careful what you watch in that hotel room or not? Are you, God forbid, or inshallah, alone in that hotel room or not? These are measuring sticks. When you are alone. That's when your actual existence and your actual asli disposition comes about. You don't have to be on anymore. The world's not watching you. No cameras in the hotel room, hopefully. That's creepy if there is. You are alone. And that's when we have to understand that. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, please. And that's one of the reasons why Imam Hussein did what he did. Is to awaken the masses. You're asleep. Awaken the masses. You know how many times Imam Hussein had to remind the army, do you not know who I am? Should I remind you who I am? You can turn these lights on, that's fine. Should I remind you who I am? If you have a chance, go through the Maqatil and read. Read the first khutbah he gives after sunrise on the day of Ashura. If you don't know who I am, and look at the first relationship he reminds Umar bin Saad's army of. The first thing he says, if you don't know who I am, I'm the son of Fatima. I'm the son of the daughter of your beloved prophets. If that wasn't enough, when he entered the Maidan of Karbala, reciting his rajas, do you not know who I am? I am Hussein. We know who you are. Then why do you want to spill my blood? We want to avenge your father and what he did to our fathers in Badr. If that wasn't enough, when that Zuljana came back to the Khayma, during Asr Ashur, rubbing his body against the blood of Hussein, going back to the Khayma, neighing and making noises as if calling Zainab al-Kubra out, leading her towards Tilla Zainabiyya, 70 steps away. At that moment, when she realized that now my brother has been surrounded by the enemy, her first instinct was to remind Umar bin Saad, Hadha Hussein, this is Hussein. On the 2nd of Muharram, when he arrives in Karbala, my Aqa, my Mazlum Mawla feels the need to do what? When it was established, this land is Karbala. Abbas, pitch up the tents. This is Karbala. This is where my Ali Akbar will fall. This is where my Qasim will fall. This is where my Abbas's arms will fall, one by one. And then he does something very ajib. He summons the Bani Yasir tribe, talks to the men of the Bani Yasir tribe. This need for him to tell everybody, I'm Hussein, I'm Hussein. Do you not know who I am? He talks to the men and says to the men, there's going to be a battle here and we're going to give our lives on this plains of Karbala. Please, if you can, your men bury our men. Your men bury our men. Then my Muslim Mullah put up a partition, talk to the women of the Bani Asad tribe. If your men are not able to bury us, all of you collectively just dig one massive grave and place our bodies in that grave. Then my Muslim Mullah went one step further, picked up the small children of the Bani Asad tribe. Are you Muslim? I'm Muslim. Do you recite the kalama? Recite the kalama. That Muhammad Rasulullah is my grandfather. I am Hussein. If your fathers and your mothers can't bury us, then you, with your small, masoom hands, pick up the khak of Karbala and just drop it on our bodies. Look, when somebody passes away in our communities, we don't feel the need to call up IEC. Please bury my husband, bury my mother, bury my brother. It's a given. Where the doctor announces death, the burial team now begins their work. But why did my Muslim Mullah feel the need to go to 3 different groups? Bury us, bury us, bury us, because he realized that for 3 days on the burning sand of Karbala, the trampled body of Hussein would be left with no kafan and not even a burial. ماطم حسين يا حسين يا حسين.
يا حسين 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 يا حسين